Chapter 4 is about Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure, the cloud computing solution of Microsoft Corporation, or from Microsoft Corporation. In this chapter, we will utilize Azure functions to create several serverless applications. Previously, we looked at AWS and created two functions, one triggered by an S3 bucket upload and one triggered by an HTTP request in the previous chapter. In this chapter, we will recreate these two triggers with different real-world examples using Azure services. This will give us a look into Azure resources and how they are different from AWS. It will also allow us to explore other ways to create and use serverless applications. For the following exercises, we will use Azure functions, webhooks, API triggers, and Azure Queue Storage. Again, for the following exercises, we will use Azure functions, webhooks, API triggers, and Azure Queue Storage. By the end of this chapter, we will have 3 serverless applications and experience with several Azure services as well as better understanding of picking cloud providers. Let's read this note. Note: we will be looking at different services than we did in AWS to provide exposure to different trigger sources. After further exercises, I recommend going back to chapter 3, the previous chapter, and trying to implement those same solutions using Azure. So the author of this book recommend, after reading this chapter, of course, going back to the previous chapter and redoing what we saw, what we implement together in AWS, re-implemented in Azure to sharpen your skills, to practice. You could also do the reverse and take the exercises from this chapter and look at them in AWS and do the current exercises, examples that we will be doing this chapter and redo them during AWS. Both ideas applies to the Google Cloud as well, right? Right. Explore the user interface as we did in the AWS. Before we begin writing our application, we'll go over the Azure user interface and how to navigate it, along with the various pricing options, the functions portal. I am someone who started developing in AWS and became very comfortable with the environment and user interface that Amazon provides. Ultimately, making the jump from AWS to Azure isn't a tough one, but the interfaces do vary a bit. They vary, and that can be a little tricky to get used to. To help ease this difference, I will walk through it, pointing out various comparisons and differences between the two. By the way, in the academic writing, they always say that the author is not supposed to refer to himself or herself by the word I, like while writing scientific papers. But apparently this is not a scientific paper, a scientific textbook. It's like a personal textbook or something like that, or a technical one. I'm not sure how to classify it. To get to the Azure portal, go to the portal.azure, www.portal.azure, just like this, .com. After signing in, so you need to create an account similar to the AWS. You will be directed to your dashboard. The dashboard gives you an overview of your resources, some tips and tricks, and you're running services. Figure 4.1 demonstrates an example dashboard. So this is an example dashboard. Again, we go to https://portal.azure.com, right? And here is Microsoft Azure, and here's the dashboard, and we have things on the left-hand side and in the middle, right, and on the top. And the title for this is 4.1, chapter 4, the first figure. It says Azure gives you an overview of your resources and running services. It also gives you access to creating new resources on the left panel. So this is access to creating new resources. Let's look at that really quick. So we have the dashboard, all resources, resource group, app services, function apps, SQL database, Azure, Cosmos DB, virtual machines, load balancers, storage accounts, virtual networks, Azure Active Directory Monitor, Advisor, Security Center, Billing. And in the middle, we have all resources, Mac attack, beginning server. I'm not sure if this is DB or what. Beginning serverless, East US plan, East US Mac attack, I'm not sure. Mac attack, different CWEF, I don't know, right? And there is a, in front of each one says cognitive service, storage account, like the type, app services, app service plan, yeah, just like the type of it or something like this. Quick start tutorials, yeah. And we have service health, marketplace, SQL database functions, app services, Linux virtual machines, Windows virtual machines, yeah. Dashboard, we have the new dashboard, the dashboard share, full screen, clone, delete. And we have like a bill here notification, and we have settings, and I don't know what is this. And the account here, yeah. Something that I really enjoy about the Azure dashboard is that, the author says, of course, something that I really enjoy about the Azure dashboard is its ability to be customized by clicking the edit dashboard, and we saw that, right? Note, it's important to keep in mind that the user interface in Azure changes quite often, possibly even more so than other providers. It would not be uncommon to log in one day and see different user interface or items with changed names. So it changes a lot. Again, this book was written in 2018. Just take that in consideration. It might be stable now. Right? Navigation. We've explored a lot of capabilities in the dashboard, but there are many other point of interest right on the portal page that will be benefit to understand early on. As in AWS, there is a bell icon on the top black bar that gives us any service updates from Azure. Next to the bell, we will have the Cloud Shell. This is a feature that I really love. So I will spend some time going over it. Figure 4.2 shows the startup secret of the Cloud Shell. So we have something called the Cloud Shell that we will be talking about. Cloud Shell. It should be somewhere here in the top. Not sure. All right. Figure 4.2, when you click on the Cloud Shell icon, Azure pulls up a bash shell that will come with Azure CLI and many other features. Your cloud drive has been created. As of now, you can use the shell to execute bash commands or switch to a PowerShell preview. I suspect the PowerShell option will be coming out pretty soon, but for now the preview will do. By typing in AZ, you get the full Azure CLI. This is an incredible feature. The ability to grab CLI in one command straight from the portal makes things so much easier. For me, it takes a step even further away for relying on anything locally, and further places it is in the cloud provider's location. This is something you'll probably notice with Azure as we move forward. Microsoft has done a great job of removing as much from the local workspace as possible. I predict this will continue to be a trend and will be something that other cloud providers such as AWS and Google catch up on. Azure Shell sessions aren't persistent, but your data will be stored between sessions. In addition, sessions are automatically synced to home directly. That now allows you to save files and scripts for reuse. This also means you can now use VI right from the Azure portal. Azure provides us a list of some things to keep in mind when using the Azure Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell times out after 10 minutes without interactive activity. Cloud Shell can only be accessed with a file share attached. Cloud Shell is assigned one machine per user account. Permissions are set as a regular Linux user. Cloud Shell runs on temporary machine provided on a person session per user basis. Ultimately, we get a lot out of the box from the browser-based shell that allows us to develop quickly without spending a lot of time on environment setup and installation. All right. Some other in the next paragraph. I'm going to skip some paragraphs because the idea is to skim the book, not to read it word by word, despite the fact I'm reading a lot, but that's fine. So I'm going to skip to the next paragraph. Some other notable navigation points of interest include resource groups, storage accounts, billing, and functions and function apps, right? I will continue to the next paragraph. Azure also uses the concept of a blade to explore different resources. So we have blade. A blade is essentially a user interface for a specific resource. Figure 4.3 shows the resource group blade that the Azure portal provides. So this is called Microsoft Azure Resource Groups, and this is called a blade. So Azure uses the concept of a blade to explore different resources. A blade is essentially a user interface for a specific resource. And this 4.3 figure has the title, the resource group blades allows you to view all of your resource group, create another resource group, and organize your current groups. Right? And we'll go to the next. And here is the storage account blade. it lets you to view all of your storage groups and resource groups associated with them. So this is the storage account or storage account blade, right? Azure recommends you keep the following in mind when creating storage accounts. Account type refer to whether you are using a general purpose storage account or a blob storage account. With a blob storage account, the access tier also determines the billing model for the account. Storage capacity refers to how much of your storage account allotment you are using to store data. Replication determines how many copies of your data are maintained at one time and in what locations. It is also important to note that pricing is different from some of these replication options. It's worth looking into before making decisions and getting a bill you aren't expecting. Transaction refer to all read and write operations to Azure Storage transactions. Data egress refers to the data transferred out of Azure region. When the data in your storage account is accessed by an application that is not running in the same region, you are charged for data egress. For Azure services, you can take steps to group your data and services in the same data centers to reduce or eliminate data egress charges. So they charge for that. The region refers to the geographic location in which your account is based. And in the next one, we have the storage account blades. Also gives you insight into particular storage accounts with various actions and metrics in the account itself. So we have accounts in the storage accounts blade, right? Mhm. In addition to storage and resources, we will also look at how to access pricing and billing from Azure Portal. And this is pricing, figure 4.6. Your billing blade gives you a very general overview of your billing information and subscription information. All right. Azure Functions. The Azure Function app are accessible from the Side Resources panel. When you open it, you are directed to the function blade. This blade shows all of your information apps and the project structures of each. Figure 4.7 demonstrates the functions blade. Here's the functions blade. The function app blade with all of your functions and project structure. So this is function app, function apps, function apps, function apps, right? I was reluctant to embrace Azure Functions because I had done so much development with AWS Lambda and cloud development within the AWS sphere. However, after navigating around functions for a little bit, I quickly became a huge fan. So the author liked Microsoft Azure. One of my qualms about AWS Lambda was the inability to view and navigate project structure efficiently. Azure solved this problem by giving you a way to access your project structure easily, make changes, and configure your serverless application, and do all of this in one spot. Right, and we'll go further. And here it says in figure 4.8, the Azure Function app lets you view your function based on its configuration, as seen on the left. It also lets you view your function's project structure and edit the various files contained within it. All right. Azure Security. So we have security, and 4.9 shows the Azure Security Blade gives you access to an overview, prevention, deletion, and advanced cloud defense with your account and services. Right? So here we have the Security Center overview, an overview, recommendations, security solutions, alerts and incidents, events, compute, networking, storage data, applications, detection, most attacked resources, advanced cloud defense, adaptive application control, preview. Yeah. The Azure Security Center helps you prevent, detect, and respond to threats with increased visibility. And two, and control over the security of your Azure resources. It provides integrated security monitoring and policy management across your Azure subscription, helps detect threats and might otherwise go unnoticed, and works with a broad ecosystem of security solutions. Microsoft lists several key capabilities. So Azure security stages, the capability. So yeah, prevent, then we have detect, then we have respond. All right, and there's an explanation opposite to each one. For example, the first one, prevent, monitors the security state of your Azure resources. The second, prevent, define policies for your Azure subscription based on your company's security requirements, the type of application that you use, and sensitivity of your data. Prevent, use policy-driven security recommendation to guide service owners through the process of implementing needed controls. And another, prevent, rapidly deploys security services and appliances from Microsoft and partners. The detect, we have three detect, and I'm not sure if we have to read each single one. Let's go through them. Detect automatically collects and analyzes security data from your Azure resources, the network, and partner solutions like anti-malware programs and firewalls. Use global threat intelligence from Microsoft products and services. The Microsoft Digital Crime Unit, DCU, the Microsoft Security Response Center, MSRC, and external feeds. And the final detect applies advanced analytics, including machine learning and behavioral analysis. It analyzes the behavior. And the respond provides prioritized security incidents and alerts